go ahead and move on to our 6.8 item, 10 a.m. presentation regarding the Housing Action and Implementation Plan, HAIP. And with us, we have Ms. Lisa Judd. Good morning.
Good morning, Board. Lisa Judd, Deputy County Administrative Officer, Housing. The County Office of Administration is very pleased to be here to give you a presentation from PlaceWorks regarding our ongoing work for the Housing Action and Implementation Plan, HAIP. PlaceWorks presentation will discuss sections of the HAIP, including current conditions, engagement and outreach, site selection, and additionally, they will preview that a GIS tool that will enhance the accessibility of the plan and an update schedule for the HAIP completion. I also wanted to mention that this has been a collaborative effort with community development, specifically Director Turner and Deputy Walker-Smith, in addition to the Vision 2050 team. This will be a foundational element for our housing element. I think that was redundant, but and with that, I will pass this over to Amy and Nicole from PlaceWorks.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Let me see if I can get this to share. There we go. My name is Amy Sinsheimer, as Lisa said. I'm with PlaceWorks. I also have with me here today Nicole West. We've been happy to be working with the community and the staff since earlier this year, and happy to provide an update today. So just to give an overview on the project, the Housing Action and Implementation Plan is to augment, the state required efforts that are part of your housing element update and really take a look at the local need in the county as well as in Clear Lake and Lakeport. So it is related to the general plan update process that's underway, which the board has been involved with, and probably many of you who are here today, but is not a part of that plan. It will be moving forward on a faster schedule. So we are kind of right in the end of the middle section of the work here. You can see that we have worked to gather a lot of community input, mostly during the summer months of this last year. We also have put together a current conditions report looking at demographics and other factors that affect housing in the county. We will get into that a little bit more in some additional slides. We've also been starting to work on sites analysis as well as analysis of what are the needs, the gaps, and what kind of strategies and goals can be implemented moving forward. We do not have a draft yet of the goals, strategies, actions, and resources part of the HAIP, as we call it, the plan, and so that will be coming in winter 2025 for the public review is our estimate right now. So I think that's it for this first slide. Moving on to, as I mentioned, the current conditions and summary report. This will be an appendix to the draft HAIP plan. It does include quite a bit of demographic information, population, economics, housing. In particular, there are certain populations that tend to have greater housing needs and those that do in Lake County and the cities we have highlighted. Wanted to mention veterans are a group that has been highlighted, and there are some assistance programs available, including federal vouchers for housing in the county, but there could be more. So that is one thing the strategies are looking at. We also have quite a bit of information about seniors in this part of the report. There are developments specifically that are age restricted for seniors, There are 14 that we have listed in table 22 of this part of the report, and they have capacity for over 450 residents. There's at least one additional project that's coming online right now. So that is a need in the county as well. We have a section of this appendix that's about regulations related to housing, both in terms of the local zoning at the county and city level, but also state law, as well as, how does all of this work together to either facilitate or not facilitate housing. This existing conditions information sets out the regulatory framework, and then the next steps in the plan will kind of take a look at, are there changes that are needed or things that can be done to incentivize housing. Get into a little bit more of the detail on that in a minute, but we also have a section that talks about fair housing. There is quite a bit of state and federal law addressing fair housing, and when the county and the cities update their housing elements in a few years, that is a new focus for the state. So we've taken a look at some of the data for your county. We also have information about local and regional resources for housing services, housing facilities, what's the state of infrastructure, and also some information about where folks can go to get housed during a disaster and other disaster-related services and issues. So we wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the more recent changes in state law related to housing that either are already impacting the Lake County area or could potentially be, something that makes a difference. So Assembly Bill 2162 went into effect a few years back. It basically says that all jurisdictions across the state need to allow for permanent supportive housing, which basically housing that's affordable and also provides supportive services. There are many different types of permanent supportive housing, so it can be for different groups of folks. But they must be allowed, without discretionary review in multifamily, residential, or mixed-use areas. So that's a change from historically, that was something that was left up to the local government. And part of that law also says that when applications for this kind of project come in, they must be reviewed in a timely fashion. That's the short version of what the second bullet says there. So this, I think, is already something that's happening in some places in the county, and maybe as a result of this law. Accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units have really become allowed much more broadly across the state of California since about 2018. The law changes almost every year on this topic, so in general, it has just become more permissive. If you want to build a granny unit or accessory dwelling unit, either in your yard or inside your existing home, that is generally allowed if you follow certain development standards or criteria in the law. And just a little more on that, just some examples of, the things that the state law talks about. So lot size, height, setbacks from, the street and other buildings, other properties, number of bedrooms, parking, the size of these accessory dwelling units, and, whether or not fees can be charged. So in general, all of these things are set in state law, and the local jurisdictions comply with them. And then finally, in terms of environmental review of projects, so generally under the California Environmental Quality Act, there are certain residential projects that do not have to go through as much review, which makes it more of a sure thing for somebody proposing that project. They have to meet certain standards, health and safety, consistency with the general plan, things like that. But once that happens, there are certain categories of exemptions, is what it's called, to actually allow for a very minimal review and not really any public review of certain projects. And there's a list here of some of those exemptions that may already be used in Lake County or could be potentially suited for this area. So this type of option has been increasing under state law over the years. So trying to streamline certain types of housing development. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to share these updates with you. As Amy mentioned, it's been a pleasure working with Lisa and the rest of the staff and the community on this effort. Next slide, please. I'll talk first about the outreach activities that we've been doing. The outreach for the HAIP has been thorough, and we received a lot of feedback from a wide range of perspectives. We benefited greatly from the parallel timing of Lake County 2050, the general plan update. We were able to collect input on housing from a combined community survey, 2 community open houses, meetings with the General Plan Advisory Committee, the local area plan advisory committees, an environmental justice focus group, and meetings with Spanish-speaking residents and several Native American tribes. Specifically for the HAIP, we also engaged with local stakeholders and housing specialists, including the continuum of care and professionals working in land development, real estate, and economic development. And we also received valuable information from the nonprofit NCO and from the Lake County Department of Social Services. Next slide, please. We've prepared a detailed summary document that will be an appendix to the HAIP where you can read more about all of these findings and all of the outreach activities. And these findings inform the goals and strategies for the HAIP as well. They include fire safety and insurance as the biggest, most broadly, frequently mentioned housing-related concern through all the different outreach activities. And there's also broad support for a variety of housing and ensuring that there's types of housing that are affordable to all of the different economic levels. Also, outreach participants showed a lot of support for things that the county can do and the 2 cities to amend their zoning regulations to be more flexible and speed up residential construction. Next slide, please. There's also a lot of support for infill development and limiting new development in certain areas. And that finding informs the plan as well as the site analysis. Also, the community considers maintaining and rehabilitating homes and neighborhoods as a really high priority. And generally, vacation homes and short-term rentals are considered beneficial. Next slide, please. So that summary document that I mentioned has these major themes that really bubbled to the surface with all of the robust outreach activities that we did. It's a lot about the concerns and opportunities, what is needed, who needs housing, where should it go, how should it be done. So you can look forward to seeing that as an appendix soon. I'll go ahead and move on to the site analysis now. You can go, yes, thank you. So the purpose of the site analysis is to identify sites for a variety of types of housing, and this includes suitable sites, which means generally that housing's already allowed and they're either vacant or they're good sites for redevelopment. We're also looking to identify priority sites, which means that they are suitable, plus there's other conditions either of the site itself or the surrounding area that make it favorable for housing and really a particular priority for a variety of reasons. And then we're also looking for sites to consider for rezoning, and that could be to add housing as an allowed use where it's not allowed right now, or to densify where housing is already allowed. And these are being identified in coordination with the potential land use changes that are being discussed as a part of the general plan update. Next slide, please. So I have 2 slides about the considerations that we think of when we're looking at the sites. We look at the housing element inventory from the last cycle and see which sites are still available. And then we also look ahead to the next cycle, which is coming up here just in a couple of years. We're really planning to, as Lisa mentioned, set you up for success for that. And so we think of what HCD, the Housing and Community Development Department, we think of what they're going to be looking for when they do their review and certification. So we apply their criteria. For example, sites that are suitable for meeting the lower income housing needs can only be counted where at least 15 units per acre is allowed. And then they also have pretty strict definitions of vacant and underutilized, and so I'll talk about that in just a minute. And then there's also some fair housing considerations that we keep in mind that we know HCD is going to prioritize. Also, we've been looking at tax credit financing applications and the additional points that you can get for citing your site being adjacent to transit, parks, and other amenities. So we're keeping that in mind as well. And then we're coordinating more with the general plan team, in particular the team working on the safety element, to make sure that we're considering flooding, landslides, evacuation constraints, and fire hazards. And then also water, of course, and wastewater is a big consideration as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, HCD is pretty strict about what they will consider as a vacant site. There can't be any structures, even structures on not permanent foundations, no improvements or existing uses. However, that doesn't mean that a site is not good for redevelopment. And so we would consider an underutilized site to be one where it's not vacant, but it actually is a really good candidate for redevelopment. And that could be either of the entire site, or maybe there's an existing use that's going to stay on a portion and there's room on that site for additional development. So some of the examples here are listed on the screen for what would be a type of site like this, where if you might have, say you have a big anchor store and they know that they're going to be moving to another location in the next year and those uses are going to be discontinued, start thinking about what's going to happen with that site. And then also places where we have abandoned vacant buildings or deteriorated and older structures, or where you have a high opportunity area with other kind of neighborhood amenities nearby that really make it a good candidate for adding potentially a mixed use development there. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah, so Lisa mentioned this interactive web map, which is a really fun and exciting way of being able to show the results of the analysis that we're working on. It is not yet available to the public, but it will be once we get it all buttoned up. So I have just a few slides here that show some of the features. In the top left, you can see that there is a place where you can show different items from the legend, and then you can also look at different layers. And then you can also filter for different things that we're in the process of adding through our analysis. For example, how I mentioned the suitable sites, priority sites, potential rezones, vacant and underutilized. These are the different filters that we would use. And actually, Amy, you could advance a couple slides. I have those shown. Yeah, that's the one in the middle, and then one more slide is the one on the right. So and then we can stay there for a second. There's a couple ways to find parcels on the map. You can zoom in manually, or you can enter addresses or APNs into the search bar, and then you can zoom to the site that way. Next slide, please. And then once you get to the site, that's what you see there. It pops up with all this information, and we've been enriching the data with all this different information. And so when it is available, you'll be able to see all of that. Next slide, please. And then another way, instead of just searching for one individual site, another way to use this tool is to use the map filters to, for example, look at all the sites that are vacant or all the ones that are priority. And then you can further refine that through a tool that we added on the right where you can select the different jurisdictions and filter for that as well. So that's my last slide, and we are happy to take comments and questions from you.
Thank you very much for your presentation and your work. Supervisor Pyska.
Very comprehensive. There's a lot going into this, and it was so needed. So thank you all for that. One of the things that has come up a lot in my work for disaster recovery is what happens after we have a disaster where housing is lost. And then we know that checkerboarding happens when development begins again, and you have lots that are developed and lots that aren't developed. And we're seeing that in all the footprints of all the fires that we've had. And so when we think of fire as our big disaster, and we have checkerboarding happening, then we have increased risk in those new communities. And I know Chief Duncan's here; he sees it every day. We know this is something that's going to come, with the footprint of the Boyles Fire after Clear Lake. So one strategy that's been talked about in some of the national groups I'm working with is developing a land trust that comes in and buys up those lots, because we've got people that are never coming back, yet they are hanging on to their property here, and they don't really understand the peril that they're putting their neighbors in, potential peril. So a way to do this is buy up these properties through a land trust, manage them, manage the vegetation, and then potentially sell them to developers or builders. This is happening in Maui right now, where they're really trying to protect the local community and the people that live there, so that the Native people aren't displaced. It's applied in different ways throughout the country. So I wanted to bring this up. It's something that Lisa and I have talked about, and I also think Director Turner may have been in on that call. I don't know how it looks in our county, but I do know that we have our new community foundation. We have this HAIP, and we have some plans. So I would like this also to be something that we consider, and I hope the rest of the board has consensus for that.
Thank you for your comment. Supervisor Green?
Yeah, thank you. Question and then a question/comment. The first one was for the slide deck the first presenter put on, and I regret I don't have the name where I can read it. But there was a reference to Lakeport Dam on one of those slides. Perked my ears up since we don't actually have a Lakeport Dam. So can you pull that slide up or explain the context of that reference?
Yes, so we do have some information about the dam in our report. I can pull up the report and see what it specifically says there. 1 second. Yeah, so we do have some information that says that Lakeport Dam is an earthen dam, and portions of the city are downstream from it. Is that not correct?
I would say not at this point. 50 years ago, there was planning for a Lakeport Dam. There was also planning for a Pomo Dam down in Big Valley, but neither of those projects came to fruition. And I was a little curious, even if there was a dam there, I didn't know the context in the housing analysis. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight that. That may be something you want to double check on and update that. My second question has to do with short-term rentals and the findings of general beneficial stuff. That seems counterintuitive to me, because when I think about housing availability, and we have perfectly good residential homes that are basically precluded from housing people permanently on a year-round basis because they're being made available for short-term rentals or as second homes for vacationers or stuff like that. So I'm wondering how deep a dive this particular HAIP is going to go into short-term rentals, because maybe there's general agreement in the people you've been talking to about their beneficial status, but when it comes up to here at the policy level, I don't know that I'm instantly convinced that it is beneficial. I think the equal argument could be that they're detrimental to housing availability in Lake County. So can you just speak a little bit about how deep you went into STRs and how deep you're going to go as we move forward on this HAIP? If it's more of a general plan issue, we can talk about it at that level, but this seems to be where the money meets the, I don't know, I even know what I'm saying, but can you discuss STRs and your findings on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you for that question. And I think in the interest of brevity, we just gave you kind of the headline, but the outreach summary has a lot more detail on that. And you're absolutely correct that there are community concerns about vacation homes and short-term rentals replacing long-term residents. the community survey had a lot of questions about this and about concerns and benefits, and then also about what kind of potential regulations the county could take, and lots of different ideas there and results from the community survey. Also, this community survey was organized around the local areas, and so the results that are reported in this summary show which local areas have more concerns than other areas, and also which areas believe that there's more benefits versus concerns.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Crandall?
Yes, so thank you for this. I'm glad to see that, it mentions in the legislation text that the priorities are in place because we need more housing at all income levels. I bring that up because I would like to see what we can also find or put ahead of the stream. I guess that's the best way I can say it is the issues that I have with a couple of developers. So when these developers come or these folks that are going to build, implement this, and they at times are building for senior citizens or people with low income, needs. And so these folks sometimes use this capital improvement mindset to impose onto these renters that are on fixed incomes. And I understand at the state level, there's not a lot we can do, but if there's something we can do to prevent that and ensure that some of these folks aren't basically moved out of their homes because of this, if there's something we can do, I'd like to see what that is. I have 3 of them in my district. They're also tied to things that have happened in Willits and a couple other places. And so I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. So there was a request, at least for potential consensus from Supervisor Pyska to maybe continue looking into the opportunities, and I see the checkerboard already in existence in some of our old developments that have not sustained fire or anything like that as well, because lots were sold a long time ago, and certain families, certain owners just decided not to do development. So as you go through the avenues, for example, in the city of Clear Lake, you'll start seeing some of those checkerboard lots where absolutely is where you see the vegetation just a little bit more out of control. And most of the time, you'll have neighbors that take care of that rather than the actual responsible owners themselves, if they even take care of it at all. And so I think that looking for ways to better secure our communities, I think is, I'm open to that. I'm not sure if that's the solution, but if I don't have that discussion and open up for this conversation, then maybe I'm saying no to something that might actually work. So I'm open for the idea to come back to the board and see what's possible. And I think that one of the things that I'm really curious about the sites that you're looking for, because I don't have the details, but I saw that you're obviously looking at the entire county. But I hope that I really appreciate what you mentioned, because it was also something I was thinking the whole time, that as we're doing this simultaneously with the General Plan Update 2050, that we really review where is it that we want to really focus for growth. And I'm looking at the GIS map right now. We have our community growth boundaries, but I don't know when the last time we necessarily updated that. We have large communities that are not specified as community growth boundaries. And I think along with community growth boundaries comes certain measures to protect those communities. For example, cannabis. You have to be 1,000 feet away from community growth boundaries in order not to be embedded within these communities that have grown over the years. And so certain ones are not necessarily made safe from those. And when I say safe, I mean subjected to the potential smell that comes from those types of operations and the traffic that comes from those operations and things like that. And so I hope that we're looking at what 2050 will be doing, if there's going to be an expansion of community growth boundaries within the County of Lake, and also that we're really looking at infill sites within the community growth boundaries, because it's so much easier to protect the community growth boundaries from the fires that we've endured throughout the last decade or so, that we just have to be mindful that in the future, if a private person wants to build a house in the WUI and the wildlife urban interface, that's up to them, and go through the planning phase and go through the permitting phase. But if we're going to be helping whatsoever in getting tax credits or using some of the funds that we receive from the state or feds, I would want to make sure that we're focusing on ensuring that those are going to be added into the community growth boundaries, just because we have to think in a 20, 30 years. And if this is what we're experiencing right now, I don't know that we've tapered off with the issues that we're dealing with when it comes with climate change, fires, and so on. I'm more worried about the fires than I am about the floods, but flooding is also still an issue that we have to be wary of. And so that's really my only thing that I'm hoping the site selection is really focusing on. And I'm putting my LAFCO hat. We want to maintain our open space. We just had a conversation about agriculture. We want to maintain our agricultural space as well. And there's a lot of chance for infilling in those checkerboards and working with rehabilitation to make those things happen. So those are my only comments, but I do appreciate the deep dive that you've done. I'm looking forward to that mapping tool being available to the public, and seeing the final report as you continue to work towards that.
Thank you for that. I'll add that a little bit of context as well. With this initial pass at the sites for the HAIP, our aim is to provide the county and the cities with a lot of information in a really clear format. We do want to help with identifying priority sites that can be marketed to developers, but then it's the housing element that's coming up in a couple of years where you can take this as well as the other results from the general plan process that will be happening after the HAIP wraps up, and then you can even drill down further at that point in a couple of years when working on your housing element inventory.
Thank you so much. And I did see that Director Turner approached the dais, wondering if she wanted to respond or make a comment before I open it up for public comment. And Vice Chair, I see you.
Thank you. Mireya Turner,
Please.
Community Development Director. I'd be happy to have a discussion with you regarding community growth boundaries offline. I find your thoughts very helpful, but I don't want to derail the focus that we have on the HAIP right now. So thank you.
Thank you.
And
Vice Chair Crandall?
the other thing I was going to mention, I heard short-term rentals as well mentioned by my Supervisor Green. And I know that there's been some discussions and work that's moving in that area on another end. So that's where we can, with an ordinance, put that ahead and ensure that it doesn't affect this. So I'll let that come when it comes, because I know it is. But yeah.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Green, did you want to respond?
No, just a Supervisor Pyska's suggestion. Consensus. I agree with that.
Okay.
I don't know where my mic went.
All right. Let's go ahead and open it up for public comment. And I'm going to start on Zoom. We've had a couple hands up. So let's start with Marco Cambara.
Good morning, Board. Thank you for the opportunity to ask questions on the HAIP. I have a couple of comments. First, I'm sorry, I didn't explain my background. I am a member of the General Plan Advisory Committee, and I was wondering where the materials are available that you have. It sounds like you have great data, and I would like to take a look at the community input that you've gotten. I think that would definitely better inform work on the general plan. And then I have two other comments and questions. One is relative to what Vice Chair Crandall brought up, what's happening with some of our mobile parks, which house our seniors and low-income people. Some communities have made arrangements to allow mobile home residents to purchase a mobile home park before investors purchase the park. And I was wondering if you can make a note of that to see if that can be feasible for Lake County. And my other question is, would you please comment on your approach to assessing the farm worker housing situation in Lake County? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Nicole or Amy, are you able to respond?
Yeah, certainly to the first and the third question. We have a draft of the engagement summary, but there are just a few meetings that haven't occurred yet. We're finishing up some of the meetings, the consultations with tribes. There's also an agricultural industry stakeholder meeting coming up, and we want to add summaries of both of those. And we also anticipate meeting with staff in Lakeport and Clear Lake as well. And so after that, the outreach summary will be finalized, and we can work with staff about how that will be released to the public. And then what was the third question? Sorry, the agricultural. Yeah, so the stakeholder meeting that's coming up will speak to that topic.
Whoever has their phone on speaker, if you can please turn off your phone.
And then I can say just a bit about the mobile home comment. So we are looking into protections for existing mobile home park residents as part of the goals and strategies. Some of that already exists under state law, but we're looking into, options that could happen in your county. So thanks for that suggestion, and we've definitely gotten that input as part of the outreach so far as well.
Thank you for your responses to that. Next is Betsy Kahn.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. This is Betsy Kahn from the Essential Public Information Center. I would like to suggest that, as one commenter made, the populations within the community growth boundaries that were set in 2008 may have increased significantly. And so it would be helpful to see the outline of the community growth boundary with the added growth identified in those parcels that are surrounding it. More importantly, I would like to see that the community growth boundaries establish 5, 10, and 20-year planning horizons under the rubric of the sphere of influence, similar to what LAFCO does for the independent special districts that provide health and safety services, and make sure that each of those special district boundaries with their boundaries are workable, so that you don't have a community growth boundary sphere for 10 years that exceeds the ability of the water district, for example, to provide water. So I think the sphere of influence model is really helpful for communities to understand where they can grow and what it would take to get there. Let's see, the other, that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Betsy. I see no further hands in Zoom. Anybody in the audience wish to speak on this item? I see no one getting up, so I'll bring it back to the board. Any final comments? And again, this is only partway through the final report. Looking forward to the final report. It looked like it said towards March would be the end. And so we'll welcome that back when it's ready to come back. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.